Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is someone using storytelling as a tool for healing, identity, and transformation. Johnzelle Anderson is a licensed therapist, writer, and author of Mixtape, a memoir, a powerful story that explores mental health, race, relationships, and the journey of finding your identity. Through his work, Johnzelle shares raw and honest experience of growing up, navigating trauma, and ultimately rewriting his life story. Johnzelle, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, so yeah, we're gonna be diving into your 20s a little bit. Heads up. All right, so take us back to your 20s. What was life like for you during that period, especially navigating identity and your past experiences?
Great question. I tell people all the time that the 20s are the most dynamic and sometimes chaotic and transitional decade of life because you go from, say, you know, being an adolescent into adulthood, but you don't necessarily, just because you're legal or whatever, it doesn't mean that you have it all figured out.
Mm.
People go to college, people, engage in relationships, whether they be friendships, things change with families, people sometimes get married, they have children. And not everybody in their 20s is doing it at the exact same time. People move for jobs and build their careers and all of this stuff. So the 20s is a very dynamic decade. My 20s started out finishing up undergrad, and then I went to grad school, and then of course there's identity development going on there, and then going through my residency, becoming a therapist. But then while that was happening, I, dated and got married. And then as my residency and, becoming a therapist progressed, there's the whole almost like unlearning things that no longer suited me from childhood or earlier days, and developing into the adult I wanted to be. And then towards the end of my 20s, my daughter was born. I opened my own therapy practice, and had to reckon with some of the um, generational cycles that I had experienced and stuff like that. So and then along the way, like friendships changed and came and gone, and moving, and just all these different things, travel. The 20s were very dynamic for me, so it's not easy for sure.
All right. And yeah, one thing I took note of is everybody's journey is different. Like you said, some people are getting married in their 20s, some are choosing their career path. Every journey is different. And also you don't have to have it all figured out in your 20s, actually. So yeah, looking back, what were the patterns or beliefs you carried that held you back during that time?
The thing that held me back for a while was a sort of survival complex that I developed at a young age. A belief that if I stopped striving, or if I slowed down, or if I rested, that everything would fall apart. Um, the belief that if I didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. Um, and while things started to stabilize and get better for me, I still carried it could all be over, uh, fear. And it got in the way of me enjoying the fruits of my labor. Um, and I'm still working through that. I'm very much like I'm 33 now, so uh, I'll say that I've gotten a lot better at enjoying the fruits of my labor, but the fear that it could all go away overnight is still kind of in the back of my mind. So that was one thing that kind of slowed me down. Um, but I can't completely let it go because, life is so unpredictable. So,
Um, wow. Okay, that one's deep actually. Having to believe such, and sometimes, like you said, it holds one back, but at the same time, you cannot let it go because life is actually unpredictable. And yes, talking about now, we're gonna do a deep dive into now. So today, you're both a therapist and a storyteller. So how do those two
yeah.
worlds connect in the work you do?
Thank you. So a few years ago, I made that my like kind of bio on Instagram because being a therapist uh, and being a storyteller, while you would think that they're two different professions, they are very similar. If when someone comes to therapy, they're sharing their story, right? And when I'm a storyteller, I'm telling my story. So, uh, in the experience of like being a therapist, like people share their stories with me. I share stories that are relevant to help them in their healing journey. And it's an exchange. We're all really, if you think about it, we're just walking stories, like whether it be through sound, whether it be through how we um, present ourselves physically, through, all of the senses, like everything is a story. So um, the exchange between being like an avid reader and loving stories and leaning into them, it also influences my therapy work because I'll recommend books to clients and we'll read them together as part of the therapy work. That's called bibliotherapy. And in them sharing their stories and working through traumas and things like that, there's an approach called narrative therapy, which is based around rewriting your story or framing your story in a way that is easier to hold. Not changing the story, but finding ways to digest, process, and live with it. So uh, they definitely they cross each other a lot. They're not separate entities, the therapist and the storyteller.
Okay, all right. So yes, talking about your book, Mixtape. Hmm. A memoir is like structured in tracks, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
inspired that unique approach to storytelling?
Yeah. So I love music. Like before I got on the computer here for this interview, I was listening to music, right, as I was getting ready this morning. I listened to music when I went on a run earlier today. I listened to music to get out of bed this morning. And, my daughter and I were dancing around as we made breakfast. I listen to music in the car. Like music is constantly my companion, right? So when sitting down to write this story, I won't call it my life story because I'm only 33. I have a lot of life left to live. So writing this memoir in this era that I covered in Mixtape and Memoir, I thought of it like if you were to make a movie of your life, and I asked myself, what would the soundtrack be? Because I got the stories, I have the scenes, but what's the soundtrack? And I wanted to bring that element of sound to the literary. So I wanted it to, when I finished it, if I did it right, it would be a literary version of a mixtape. So the songs, the playlist is your table of contents, and your instead of chapters, they're tracks. So these tracks complement what I'm saying in that section of the book, but they also encourage. They give voice. They almost like affirm previous versions of myself. And they also give like natural like breaks to the reader. Like if you have just finished a section and then you hear the new song, it's almost like you get to, it's like a multi-sensory experience to, you're immersed in my story, but you're also, I'm sharing something that I would say is probably one of the more intimate things. Like I'm talking about my intimate details in my life, right? But I think to share your music with someone is very personal, as I'm sharing my very personal experiences. So um, that's why I wanted to do it that way. And a second meaning to the word mixtape is the first four letters MIXT is mixed. And that's what they call people who have a white parent or two different race parents, right? When I grew up in the 90s. So they called me mixed. And so I like the double meaning of mixtape, but also mixed uh, as a, nod to the identity and the terms used when I was growing up.
All right. Wow. Now I'm eager to read the book. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I need to see this book. All right. So, some of your themes, right, they focus on mental health, race, and identity.
Mhm.
So, what are why are these conversations so important right now?
Um, Race is only important because we live in a world. I'll speak for my the country I live in, the United States. Race is a social construct. It is something that has been used to determine someone's character worth. It's almost like it's a way to categorize people without even knowing them.
Mm,
And so since I live in a alleged white supremacist society, and I don't believe that white is supreme. But because I live in a country where there are people fighting for superiority of existence, um, talking about what it was like to be black, raised in whiteness, um, and furthermore, like in mixtape, talking about how my first racists were the white caregivers in my family, um, and then also like later on in my 20s, like I really almost like lean into the blackness and exploring my West African roots in the evolution of who I am today. And so that's race, and it's complex, and sometimes races that people have expectations of you, um, but it's only because it's constructed. People say that because your skin is this color, this means this about you, right? Or this tells your story, but that's not true. You said race and identity. What was the other one in the question?
okay. Mental health, right?
Mental health, yes. So identity across the board, the intersections of race, uh, uh, justice, sexuality, those things are covered in this book. Mental health, I approach, this book is not a therapy book. It's not a textbook. It's not clinical. It's my personal story. I am a therapist, but I don't write like a therapist, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm a human just like the person sitting across from me. Uh, so mental health to me, at least in this story, is me sharing the evolution of what it was that led to, of course, the trauma that kind of led to me feeling and the identity that I had. And then I share my experiences about, having panic attacks in college and being diagnosed with panic disorder and, you know, talking about what it's been like to live with an anxiety disorder and what it has been to work on healing the different traumas that I've been through in life and stuff like that. And then also from my journey of becoming a therapist, talking about how, going to therapy encouraged me or inspired me to become a therapist and to be involved in the healing journeys of other people. So mental health is just kind of like storytelling is very just interwoven into my life from a personal standpoint, but also in the impact that I am fortunate enough to get to have on my community.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for actually like taking us along with your book, right? And yeah, I am eager to ask this one question, which is what are you currently working on or building that excites you the most? And looking ahead, what kind of impact do you hope your story or your book will have on others?
So I'm currently working on three other books
Mm,
to follow up Mixtape. All I'd say most of them are in the early to mid stages. Probably because I'm working so hard to promote Mixtape and Memoir, it's hard to, of course, I have a full time, therapy practice, and I'm a company of one, but then I'm a single parent, and I'm also promoting this book, and life is just crazy anyway, So, um, but the thing I'm most excited about, outside of, Mixtape has been at the time of this interview has been in the world for 2 weeks now.
mm,
I'm excited, of course, to see the impact that it's having. And I'm being surprised every day by how different people interpret my story and how it meets them. But as far as new work, I, I'm working on, I'm not staying in the genre of memoir per se.
mm.
So I'm working on a children's book. I'm working on a bisexual romance novel, possibly novella, depending on how long it's going to be. And then after that, I want to put out another memoir that is new stories, but I want to write it in poetry. I want to write it in verse. So um, I am, I would say I'm most excited about the novel. Um, and I'm also very excited about the memoir in verse only because I just started writing poetry like a year ago. So I'm challenging myself to write another memoir, but I'm doing it in a genre that is unfamiliar to me. And I like challenging myself to think outside of the box. So, um, yeah, it's just finding the time to sit down and write with all these other things going on. But I'm grateful to um, be able to tell stories and to um, do this kind of work. So.
Right, okay. And yes, Johnzelle, this has actually been a quite meaningful conversation. And I hope it will help my listeners one way or the other, especially your book, right? Because I'm looking forward to reading your book. And I wanted to ask, is there like an audio book, like audio version of the book?
There is. Currently, it's available on Audible or Apple Books, and that's for the first 3 months that it's out. It's like a limited exclusivity contract, but then after 3 months, it'll expand out and it'll be available anywhere you can get audiobooks. Um, but yes, there is an audiobook, and I narrate it, so it's me reading my book to you.
Oh, okay. I prefer that one actually to like reading the book. Don't mind
Yeah.
really. All right. So finally, yeah, if you could give one honest piece of advice to someone in their 20s who is struggling with identity or healing or feeling like they don't belong, what would it be?
Okay. One of my favorite quotes that helped me a lot in my 20s is comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm.
And I break that down to say that the reason we say comparison is the thief of joy is twofold. First, if, say, I believe that I'm doing better than somebody and I compare myself to them, I make them feel bad. by comparing myself to someone who I perceive as doing worse. And if I compare myself to someone I think is doing better than me, I make myself feel worse or I make myself feel bad. So no matter what you do, when we go comparing, someone is going to hurt. There
Mm,
is going to be joy that is stolen. That's why they say comparison is the thief of joy. So comparing ourselves is human nature. However, check yourself when you find yourself comparing. When you find yourself comparing, well, my friend got 20 likes on their picture and I only got five. Or when, you say, well, he's driving this kind of car and I'm taking, public transportation. Where it like you're gonna find that you're losing your joy in doing a lot of comparisons. So while it's human nature to compare ourselves, you have to you have the opportunity to be mindful of that and to limit how often you do that so that you can pursue your own joy and gratitude. Doesn't mean that it's easy, but you'll save yourself a lot of grief if you can get comfortable with doing that.
mm, mm. Thank you for that one. Actually, I feel like that is quite important, honestly. And yes, like you said, comparison is a thief of joy. And everybody wants to retain their joy, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
in order to retain your joy, avoid comparing yourself to other people or probably comparing other people's life to yourself. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that brings us to the final segment of my podcast. It's called the rapid fire segment.
Okay,
All right, so starting
I'm ready.
now, one thing that helps you heal.
Books.
Okay. I believe you had to unlearn.
Ooh, a belief that I had to unlearn, that I have to do it all on my own.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Something people misunderstand about trauma.
People misunderstand, they think that you have to get over something, but the misunderstanding is that you don't get over something, you have to go through it in order to transcend.
Hmm. Okay. All right. What's one habit that supports mental health? I think it's reading.
I'm going to say running or
Oh,
exercise.
okay, workout basically. And yes, one word, finally, one word that describes your journey.
Reciprocity.
Hmm. Wow, interesting. All right. So yes, Johnzelle, this has been amazing. And where can listeners get to learn more about your work, your book, and what you do, basically?
Thank you. Also, thank you for having me today. I greatly appreciate the time. Listeners can find me on Instagram at Johnzelle, which is spelled John like Nancy, Z like zebra, ELLE underscore. So at Johnzelle underscore on Instagram. My website is johnzelle.co, same spelling, and it's .co. So that is where you can find Mixtape and Memoir. It has all of the links to the physical, the ebook, the audiobook, signed paperback, all of that, whatever version of the book you might be interested in. You can also just learn about the book, see other interviews I've done, like blurbs, reviews, that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn more about my story, you can go there. But yeah, otherwise you can catch me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. So follow me and say hi, and I'll chat with you.
All right. Yeah, I'm definitely following you on Instagram, by the way, after
Oh,
this.
thank you.
Okay. All right. So, to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Johnzelle. Do have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you. Take care.